Today on People It, we are talking about love. My guest is Martin Bjergegaard, an author, entrepreneur, and investor. He thinks that we should treat business as a love affair. Love for people and love for planet. Enjoy. All right, Martin, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We are going to have a chat about what love means in a people-led organization. Before diving into that topic, can you tell the listeners a bit about yourself and who you are and why you're on this show?
I can definitely tell who I am. I started as an entrepreneur very early on. My dad was an entrepreneur, so that was a natural thing for me to do. So I created my first company from I was 18, and then a handful of them between 18 and 23. And then, of course, why a handful? That was because why wasn't one not enough? And that was because it didn't really work out. So I had to do 5 different attempts to make. None of them really did. So I got a bit disappointed with that. I went to business school to take a master in strategy and management. And from there on, I got a job with McKinsey as a management consultant, traveling around the world and advising big companies on how they should do things and basically helping them increase the bottom line. From there on, I moved to work with Claus Meyer, who most Danes will probably know, most Danish listeners will know. Very successful and heart-based Danish and food entrepreneur, and I really enjoyed that. And there I got an idea for my 6th attempt, another company, and I got Claus as my investor, and that one actually worked out and became a success with 20 million Danish revenue the first year. And that made me quite excited about entrepreneurship again. And together with 3 friends, we came up with this idea that we should make a company factory so we could execute on many ideas and not just one. And that was a very optimistic and you can say forward-thinking plan, because these kind of vehicles do exist today. They almost didn't at the time. There's only one we could find in the US, but we went for it and we got some investors on board just before the finance crisis. So that was a good moment there to raise some capital. And we created Rainmaking, which was born the 1st of January 2007. So 13 years ago now. And then during those 13 years, we have created 25 own companies, and some of them have become quite good, and we also exited some of them. And then we also started helping other entrepreneurs with their ideas in the vehicle called Startup Bootcamp, a startup accelerator. Actually, more than 800 startups have been through that now, and it's active in 19 cities around the world, having assisted startups to raise more than 600 million euro. So that's been a very powerful method to assist startups in getting funded. And then we started making co-working spaces for startups because we had our own ventures and we were assisting other startups. So it felt natural to have a big house essentially where we could host, and also started working with big corporates. So in our consultancy part of the business, we work with more than 80 Fortune 500 companies over the years. And there are almost 300 consultants now across locations. And I was part of all of that, you can say, for 13 years. That was very exciting. And then also it had reached a level of, you can say, maturity. And I had been on my own journey as well. So it felt as the optimal thing for me to start all over again. And therefore I'm now creating the new, as my LinkedIn profile says. And I'm kind of like a month into that process of doing exactly that.
Yeah, cool. So you had a lot of experience on how to run a company and how to grow them and stuff like that. The title for this podcast is something you suggested we should talk about, something that's really on your mind at the moment, and that is love. And when you first suggested it to me, I was like, yeah, but what exactly do you mean by that? And then you told me a bit of story of how the Greeks have different levels of what love is and stuff like that. So maybe you can just elaborate on that. What does love mean in a company, and how do you see it?
Yes, absolutely. Um, so love can be many things, right? And nowadays we're used to talking about love in the form of maybe romantic love that we can have with our girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, spouse, and that's of course wonderful and important. Then there's also biological love, the love we can feel for our parents, our close family members, and also of course very important. At the same time, it's clear that that's not the only form of love that exists, and as you mentioned, the Greek philosophers had more types of love than that. And one of them is Philia, that was what they called it. And that is the love that can happen between people who are on the same purpose, on the same mission, working together. And that can be very powerful and uplifting for a team to have Philia, to have that kind of companionship on something as challenging as creating a company and succeeding with a company, growing a company. And of course, the opposite is not, we all experience that, most of us anyway, when it gets to be more with politics and backstabbing and gossiping and pressure, anxiety, who's doing what, and can you really trust anyone? And that gets to be a very unhealthy place to be. Many workplaces actually operate like that. And if nothing else, they are quite cynical. So there's not a warmth there. And people get sick actually. And this is why today we have the highest levels of stress, burnout, and depression that's workplace related than we ever had. Even though we have also more awareness, more technology, more wealth than we ever had. So there's something here we're not doing right. There's something that's the missing ingredient. And I believe the missing ingredient is basically love. And love as a state of being. Love is a state of being. Right in this very moment, I can feel loving awareness or not. That's my choice in this moment.
Yeah.
And it's not dependent on anything. It's not requiring my spouse to be here or my child to be here or me to think about them specifically. And if they love me back, and if they had a good conversation today, or if we didn't, there is an opportunity for each of us to experience the state of being loving and feeling love. That's our potential actually. And we get so used to externalizing it and attaching it to another person that if my beloved smiles to me in the right way, if she says the right words, oh, then I can experience love. But that means that I'm totally outsourcing love to someone else to deliver it to me. This is why most people would, you can almost say, we walk around with a begging bowl. Please love me, please love me, please love me, because I cannot fill myself with love. And there is a higher way. There is a higher way of being in life where we can actually fill our own cup with love. And we can do that in a culture, in a company, so that it becomes a wonderful place to be, a nurturing place to be. I wouldn't say that I have all the answers exactly yet on how to do that. It's a process. It's something new for humanity to embark on. It's necessary, because if we continue to operate companies as we do today, based on competition, greed, fear, anxiety, stress, burnout, all of that, if we continue to operate like that, then we will have no problem in continuing to plunder and exploit and destroy the planet. And we don't have a planet B, as I said. And there's no business on a dead planet. There's no jobs on a dead planet. There's no joy, no life, no love. So we don't want a dead planet. And that's the direction we are heading. And while we are heading in that direction, we are not even enjoying the ride. But on the contrary, Gallup, that is, has been surveying humanity for years on how we thrive, have said that these years are actually the highest levels of stress and burnout and depression that we have ever seen. And if you look at the workplace, 85% of people are either disengaged or actively disengaged, meaning that they sabotage their own workplace and their own work because they resent it so much. 85% would not show up to the job tomorrow if they did not have to. And that is, in my view, great tragedy, or if you want to look at it positively, an amazing, gigantic opportunity for us to take the next leap in our evolution.
Yeah.
And for that evolution to happen, we just use more of the same. We cannot say, we need to work harder, or we need to push harder, and be very afraid the Chinese might come and steal our jobs. More of that won't work. We need something different, and something that is nurturing for a human being. Something that unlocks our creativity, our excitement, our enthusiasm, our feeling of being connected. And that magic is love.
Cool. That's a lot to take in. From that high spiritual individual level to triple bottom line in companies and all in between of that. So when companies look at this and saying, okay, love is a tool that we actually can use and we can develop and implement to make us more sustainable as a business, to help our society, to help the planet, to help everyone to feel more of who we are and love more between us. What role does the company play actively in doing this, and what role does the employees play?
Yeah, so we all have the potential, right? It's an individual choice. So I can, as an individual, choose to go to work tomorrow and to show up here today from a state of being loving. That's my individual choice. Even if there was an angry boss sitting and shouting at me, I can still choose that. We know that we have that potential because Nelson Mandela, he was in prison for 27 years on Robben Island outside of Cape Town, on that little island there. And he described that he was actually the one who was in charge of his state of being. And therefore he gradually, even though it's not easy to begin with, but he gradually found it in himself to even become friends with his prison guards. And I'm so fascinated by that. He's not the only one. We have example. Gandhi is another wonderful example. We need role models like that because they remind us that each of us individually have that potential. So we're actually not waiting for anything. It's not like, oh, when the CEO wakes up and he creates a loving company, then we can all be very loving. We can start the work right now. And of course, it can go a lot quicker if the people, you can say, at the top level, if they have that epiphany and if they start supporting it. And at the same time, the paradigm you're working with is people-led organizations. And this is definitely something that can happen also bottom up.
So when you are mentioning Nelson Mandela and Gandhi and all the other high peaks of being humans, how can we do that as individuals? So what I'm trying to understand, what role a leader or a company has in releasing that potential within ourselves. Can a company help us move along that path by inserting rules or structure or empowerment of doing that?
Yes, and it is a journey with many potential pitfalls, right? Because it can easily be a dictatorship of good intentions if a company starts saying, remember to smile every day. And you're wrong if you don't smile.
Yeah.
That won't really work. Right? We can almost imagine how terrible that would be. And we have movies showing dystopian realities like that starts with good intentions but become terrible in the way it's executed. So it's important to stay with some very basic truth and rights that we have as human beings, right? We have our freedom, and tolerance is more important. I can almost not imagine anything being more important than tolerance. So if someone does not want to be loving, then it's our job to also be tolerant of that. Of course, a company is allowed to set a certain culture and reward certain behaviors versus others, right? There's been talked a lot about, there's even a book called The No Asshole Rule from the US, and it's of course a little bit humorous and provocative, but the point there was that we will actually not tolerate anyone who is a bully and who's unkind in the workplace. We will actually fire them. And of course you can say that's unkind, but we do it to create a culture that is kind to everyone. And if anyone has been stuck in that role as the office bully, it's better to get a fresh start somewhere else. And I can definitely see the logic in that, and I don't think that there's per se anything wrong with that. But everything comes down to how it is actually implemented. So we should be very aware that we don't go into a certain paradigm where we then start making rules, as you said, and structure and these kind of things, because we want to enforce kindness, caring, compassion, love. It's much more useful to see it as actually as my journey and my commitment. If I want more love in the world, then let me do that. Let me be that. Let me be more loving right now, and the next moment, and the next moment, and the next moment. This is why I love the quote from Gandhi: "Be the change you want to see in the world." So that's through your example you do it. And this is also, we know that from parenting also. If you want to instill certain values in your children, it will not so much work through having rules. It will much be, because the moment they are out of your kingdom, they can do whatever they want, and maybe they even will, because they want to against you and all your rules. And it's much more impactful if they see you modeling a certain behavior, and it goes in maybe on a subconscious level, and they need to discover it themselves someday, and they might even say that someone else gave them the idea, but it will have made a difference that mom or dad were like that when they grew up. And so I very much believe in all of us taking on the role of being, because leadership is not a title in my view. It's a choice. Every moment you can choose to lead, if you know, bring people to a better place than what was happening anyway. Otherwise, please be a follower. If you see someone is leading and that place is a better place than what you can do, then please, all of us should be followers in that instance. I believe in that leadership should be from situation to situation. Who can right now help us get to the place we want to go?
Yeah.
And there we can all be leaders in leading the organization to become more compassionate, more caring, more loving.
Yeah. So you mentioned the book from US, the no asshole rule.
Yes.
So today's structure of how we build organizations and how we actually push forward on management and leadership and what employees is and stuff like that. It's easy to have a culture where you're saying, okay, no assholes allowed. But when you got that guy who is just outside the norm and he's kind of turning into one of the assholes, but he is really productive, or he earns a lot of money, he's a good sales rep or something like that. How would you, as a community leader, say that how we measure things in our company when it's free bottom lines? He doesn't fit the human perspective, but he really fits the economic perspective. So how would you balance that as a leader in this kind of loving organization?
So I would say that narrowly speaking, he fits the economic criteria. But what we cannot measure exactly the same way is the damage that he has to other people's performance.
Yeah.
So therefore, based on that logic, I would say he has to go. But before arriving at that conclusion, of course, I would apply myself, if I was his leader, in investigating what is actually going on here. Why is he having this kind of behavior? Is there anything I can do to make him feel more comfortable, to bring more of all the goodness that I know is inside of him? Obviously, we all want to do good. We all have good intentions, and we all act according to what we believe is appropriate. So for some reason, there's a program there that's not in harmony with the rest of the organization. And so very often we know that bullies are victims, essentially, and they're just doing what they think they have to do to survive. And is there anything that I as a leader can do to improve that scenario, that situation, so that he can stop having that behavior that other people perceive as being bullying? Then really go all in on seeing if there's an openness there. There needs to be an openness, right? And if there's an openness, my experience is we can deal with everything. It only if there's an openness. That's everything it takes. So if there's a closeness, on the other hand, that I don't want to go there. I don't want to change. I am as I am, and that is the end of story. There's nothing there that I want to change.
Yeah.
And the feedback is that he is actually hurtful to other people, hurting the culture. Then it is the leader's responsibility to, in a heartful way and in an open, transparent way with that person, to find an exit strategy where he can then be in another workplace where he might be a perfect fit. And maybe what he needs is a fresh start. So not to see him as a victim at all, right? It might be actually that he will go and perform very well at a competitor. So maybe we are the victim here. If there were any victims, in reality, there are no victims. But just to handle it as grown-ups and resolve the situation.
Yeah. All right. So when we have this, I really like that expression from the Greek philosophers, Philia. How can you measure that? How do you know if that is pointing in one or the other direction?
Yes, and I think it's a very good idea to have an employee survey regularly, and there are wonderful tools for that nowadays, and maybe quarterly, where there's a lot of questions around how the well-being is, because it will give you the early warnings if something is starting to slip. You can see that. A very small team, you can feel it if someone is not fully happy. But when you start to grow the organization, then that can be a wonderful way, and to talk totally open about it and to brainstorm. So what are you seeing here on this survey? What am I seeing? What can we see together? Where are the biggest low-hanging fruits to improve this culture, to be more efficient and also more caring, even more wonderful place to be, because otherwise days will just pass and you can live in the illusion. Especially as a CEO, you can easily live in an illusion that everyone's having a great time, and it might not be the case. So people need to be invited to share their opinion, and they need to feel that it's safe to do so. Of course, these tools, it's anonymous and all of that. At the same time, it's about creating an environment of trust and actually inviting to share ideas for how this can become even better. Of course, it's good if people can do so in a constructive way, right? We all know that. If the language is, oh, this is never going to work, or this is always wrong, you always do like that. So that's accusing and that's generalizing. Probably not always. That's probably not what I mean to say. Like very often I get the feeling that you are talking down to me or something like that. So when we can own it and we can also communicate in a constructive way and say, for me, it would feel a lot better if it could work in this way. What do you think? And then actually have difficult conversations like that, but in a respectful manner.
Yeah. Awesome. So what are the one takeaway that listeners should take from this podcast? What is the one thing that you really want to get over this and says, this is something you really need to look at?
So I would say everything starts with the dream that we are dreaming, or the vision we are having. Walt Disney said, if you can dream it, you can do it. So we can actually, as humans, it is our human potential to create organizations that are wonderful for people to be in, and financially successful at the same time, and working very well with the customers, etc. That is possible. It is not like we've been led to believe that it's either or. At least many people believe that. Many leaders think that, and if we are very successful, first financially, then there's room to care about our employees or to create a people-led organization, or to whatever good we want to do. We can do it when we make a lot of money. And then you never seem to get around to it. But actually you can do it the other way around. You can dream another dream, simply. If we can dream it, we can do it. And that's definitely the case with organizations. If we can imagine ourselves to create a wonderful workplace, that is also thriving financially. It is possible. And there are many good cases out there. Now you did mention the book, and there's an even more recent book and even more relevant book, I would say, just came out recently called The Healing Organization by a professor in the US. It's an amazing book. And there are 18 examples of companies from around the globe in different sizes and different industries. These companies have managed to become healing organizations. Some of them from the beginning when they started as per design, and some of them have been starting off as or been in a place of being a hurtful organization, and then transformed into being a healing organization, healing for people, healing for planet. It's definitely possible. There are wonderful examples out there, and so my advice would basically be to read a book like that. If you have a hard time thinking that this is possible, oh, this guy, what is he talking about? Is that really possible? Our company and our industry is so unique that here it's impossible. We do need to suffer to make it work here. We do need to push our people. I push myself, and it's tough, it's hard. And then one day I can retire. And if that is the paradigm, then it's simply for all of us to educate ourselves, because the world is a lot more, you can say there's a lot more narratives out there than one. It's a very complex place. Many things are possible. And when we start looking in the direction of a more benevolent paradigm, then it also exists, definitely. But we cannot create that before we can believe in it. That's impossible.
Awesome. Let's cut it there. I'll put the books in the show notes. And remember, you can always look up more stuff like this on our People-led Facebook group. Just find us on Facebook and add in and contribute to this beautiful society we're trying to create. Thank you for participating, Martin.
Thank you, Søren, for inviting me.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.